my guest today. It's evening in the Ukraine right now, so that's one of the reasons why we're doing it at the noon in the United States. Before I bring the guest in, I would like to ask those of you guys, first of all, I want to give an update that ever since we launched the fundraise last 3 days ago, um, a lot of you responded really well, and we pretty much have distributed almost all of the funds already. At the end of today, we're going to have on my website a distribution pretty much where the funds went and what people are doing there, as well as I'm speaking right now, right before I came on live. We are organizing a team as well from this part of our church, taking about 6 to 7 people to go on the border of Poland to help with some refugees, and also just taking people there to kind of be there, not for the photos, not just for the experience, but also to offer help. We have a missions team that will be doing that. And so for those of you guys who have it on your heart to support, it will mean a lot right now for the Ukrainian people. And all the links for that are in the chat or in the comments below. Thank you guys for those who are praying and for those who are supporting already. Now, I'm not going to take any more time because of the guest that we have today, and also because in Ukraine it's evening. It's not as it is here at noon. And so I'm going to introduce my guest. Pastor Henry Madava was born in Zimbabwe after coming to USSR and graduating from the Kiev Institute of Civil Engineers. He founded a Christian church called Victory in 1992. Pastor Henry Madava's mission and their church is to help people to find Jesus Christ and to find salvation through him. He's also a very well-known preacher and speaker in many conferences. He has preached the Word of God in over 46 countries, and he's one of the leading leaders in Ukraine, in the country of Ukraine. And not only that, but he organizes Jesus festivals around the world. And for those of you who ever seen his videos or have seen his ministry, a lot of miracles and supernatural things happen through his ministry. Where I came first in contact with Pastor Henry is when I immigrated from the Ukraine to the United States at the year 1999, and my pastor started a church here in the United States, an English-speaking church for our community, and we did not speak English. I remember feeling inspired and encouraged knowing about this man of God in Kiev who is black, whose original language is not Russian and Ukrainian, and not only he was ministering, but he was effective in ministering to the Ukrainian people. And in Ukraine, there's not a lot of people from different cultures. There's mainly Slavic people. And so to be able to see somebody who's ministering to the Ukrainian people, being of total different culture and being effective, that really brought a lot of encouragement. And today our church is 70% are not Russian people, and today we're reaching the world through our ministry. And so it's a huge honor and blessing for me to bring him on live today. I also have had a chance to meet with him last year with my wife when I was in Ukraine, and he's an intelligent, smart, anointed, and a great man of God. And I'm really was hoping that you guys will get a chance to hear today a little bit from him on his story and what is happening there from somebody who's actually in the Ukraine. So I just lost him. So so internet goes in and out. So guys, we're gonna have to kind of help with. You guys gonna have to be a little bit patient with me. This is what we're going to do. I'm gonna bring you on the other side. Yeah, okay. So that your name matches. Pastor Henry, welcome to this edition. I'm really honored that you agreed to come on and share today about your story and what is happening in Ukraine.
Thank you, Pastor Vlad. Thank you for the opportunity. It's a great privilege.
Could we start, and I mentioned just a little bit of kind of where you came from. Could you start in the beginning? How did you come to, from what I understand, USSR at the time? What brought you there and what made you stay?
Well, that's putting a whole history in one sentence. When I came to Ukraine, it was USSR to study aircraft engineering. But not just any engineer, but aeronautical engineer. So the best place to study aeronautics is always a place where they manufacture aeroplanes. So this USSR, the United States, and United Kingdom, and a few other places. And through an organization called UNESCO, they gave me a scholarship, an offer to come to the USSR, which I accepted because then they had to pay, and that's why I came. So why did I stay? When I came to the USSR, we came to Moscow. That was many years ago. So I came to they call it the University Hotel in Moscow. So the first day I came, I went around looking for Christians. These were students who were coming in. And by the end of the evening, I had a small home group in my hotel room of 15 people.
And you
I
were
don't
already
remember how.
a believer when you came. You were a
Oh,
believer from
yes. Oh,
Zimbabwe.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was already a believer. And my ministry then was very focused on deliverance. That was the main part of what I was doing then. I didn't know what. It's like I changed later into healing and other things, but originally I was very much only into deliverance.
Wow.
So what I was doing was I gathered these students. I began to give them my Bibles. I had 10 Bibles. They told me if you bring Bibles, you'll be sent back. But I brought 10.
Wow.
So I gave out 9. Came to Ukraine, I was preaching already the first week to some churches, some places. And the reason why they were giving me the platform was the deliverance ministry that I was doing then. So eventually, when I finished my graduation, the Lord told me before I graduated to stay and start a church, which I did not want to do. I was very much against it. Number one, my skin color was the wrong skin color. Number two, Ukraine society, Soviet society, so to speak, was not the society I grew up in. And so everything was very much against me staying here. But eventually the Lord convinced me. And when I graduated in 1992, in December, we did a small crusade, started the church. I graduated in 1993. That's 6 months later.
Wow. So you've been staying there since 1990. So which year did you come to Moscow? Which year did you move in to get your education there?
I came in 1986. It was around October because they had the Chernobyl accident. So
So
they
that's the same year.
delayed
That's
the.
the same year I was born.
Oh, 1986.
Yeah. So wow.
Well,
So you lived in Ukraine as long as I've been alive.
yeah. So I'm more Ukrainian than you are.
Yes, you are. Yes, yes, you are. You know not only the history but everything. But wow, I am very touched by your story of also the ministry of deliverance and how God uses you. I've seen a lot of your clips of ministry of healing and crusades, and even what you did here in the United States in Slavic churches of services and healing. Could you give us a little bit more? And you already highlighted that about being a different color for Slavic people. Most people in the West don't realize how different it is in Ukraine and how much I could say even still racism that exists in the Slavic countries. I mean, I know all of the attention right now is seen that Ukraine is just this amazing country, and it is. I'm Ukrainian, but I also know my wife went to fix her teeth in Ukraine just 6 months ago or something, and they told her don't speak Russian in some places because she's Russian because you can get in trouble for that. What was your experience like from the beginning and until now? And have you seen shift in Ukraine toward, for example, racism or other issues that are pertaining that you had encounter with? What was your experience like living there now for the last 30 years?
When I came in originally in the Soviet Union, racism was there, but officially the government would fight it officially because they were trying to be these internationalists coming to different countries to deliver them from capitalism. So there was an ongoing teaching or whatever the government was doing to make sure racism was not seen anywhere. So when the Soviet government went with its communism and the internationalism, so to speak, racism became a big issue, not only in Ukraine, but in all the former Soviet republics. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to stay here. Being black in Ukraine was like being a walking museum, you know. You go along the street, somebody runs over, especially children. I mean, they spit in their fingers, they try to rub your skin, they thought you were just dirty. So, anyway, and being a pastor, when I started the church, the Lord told me, because I told him, Lord, it won't work because I'm the wrong skin color. But the Lord, He has a way of ignoring your complaints. So I said, Lord, if you change the whole nation to love me, I will stay. And He says, if I change them, then I don't need you. I need you so I can change them. So the Lord told me, if you leave, I'll let you go, but your whole life will be misery because this is where I've called you to be. So eventually I said, okay, I'll stay. It hasn't been easy, but because I had this calling very deep inside, all this racial, there was an issue when a very big local newspaper, they had me on the front page, holding a Bible in one hand, a spear in another hand, and a human bone in my nose, trying to depict me as a cannibal pastor. So that was the situation where I was in, and I looked at that as nothing but Bible school. I mean, where I'm getting trained to getting stronger inside. So what, as long as I was in the right perspective with God, that did not touch me.
Wow.
As soon as I began to get into the self-pity mode, it began to affect me. So I had to watch myself not to get into the self-pity. I mean, I had to be strong inside. Now the country has changed quite a bit. And one of the things that have changed in the country is the many sports people who come here, soccer players coming to Ukraine. And also the Ukrainians have been open to America and they see so many black faces everywhere. And then with Obama becoming a president, that was a big issue. So now the Ukrainians, and with their own issues with Russia, it become easier for them to love other people, even if they're different people. I mean, so Ukraine has changed quite a bit.
Tell us a little bit more about your ministry, because your church is one of the very influential churches in former Soviet Union. You do a lot of ministry also to the poor, a lot of ministry to the orphans, as well as not only that, but even from Ukraine, you travel into other nations preaching the gospel, and you're very well known all the way from Ukraine. Tell us a little bit more about your church and the ministry that is happening there in Kiev.
In order for people to understand my ministry, I have to go back to where it started. Before I came to the Soviet Union, I had a 6 month period where I was doing nothing. So I went to teach mathematics in a school.
Oh, okay.
I always loved mathematics. I mean, mathematics, physics, chemistry, mechanics, that's me. So I went to teach mathematics in a school. And the director of the school was asking me to lead a Christian union. This is a group of students, Christian students, who were meeting together, but they had no leader. So they asked the mathematics teacher to be the leader of this group, which I did, but I didn't know how to preach. I would be inviting youth leaders from different churches every week. And then one time I invited a very powerful, anointed young man. I fasted for him for 5 days because they told me he was so anointed. If you fast for him, he's going to do a good job. So I fasted for 5 days, and then the guy didn't show up. He just did not show up. I was so angry, but then I had to forgive him because that was going to be my preaching number one. So I preached for 5 minutes because I was shouting a lot, lost my voice, preached from Genesis to Revelation in 5 minutes. There was nothing else to preach. And so when I had nothing else to preach, I said to the guys, you know what? Let's pray. I think the best thing we can do is just pray. So we started praying. So this is what happened. I have my eyes closed. I'm praying. Then I hear sounds, thud, 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 about 7 of them.
Wow.
So I opened one eye. I don't know why one eye. And the school kids were lying on the floor. I'd never seen this before. And this is in 1985.
Wow.
So I get to one of the little girls. So I said, "Are you okay?" And this little girl, very tiny, answers me with a deep male voice. I say, "Wow, I'd never seen this anywhere." So I'm asking one of the guys, "What is this?" So he tells me, "Mr. Madava, that's what we call a demon." I said, "Wow, demon. I'd never seen anybody cast any demon in a church." So I leave this little girl. I go to one guy and I shake his hand and he begins to roar like a lion. And they tell me, this guy is a prophet in his church. So if you cast out that spirit, the bishops will come after you.
Wow.
Wow. This is my day number 1 of preaching demons and demoning a
Pastor
prophet.
Henry, how old were you at the time?
I was 19 years old.
Wow. In former Soviet Union.
This was in Africa. Before I came.
Oh, okay. So this was in Africa before you came to.
This is just before I came.
A year before.
So that was my initiation into ministry.
Wow.
And then 6 months later, I'm in the Soviet Union with all that baggage,
Baggage. Well, it reminds me of Jesus. Jesus went in first time in the synagogue and demons start manifesting.
Yeah. So I came to the Soviet Union with all that baggage. And of course, I jumped into ministry right away. So anyway, the spiritual world became very real to me.
Wow.
And demonic forces, seeing them and casting them out.
Wow.
And gradually, I began to use the same thing to get into healing and miracles. So our ministry in Ukraine basically is a ministry where the church is a place where miracles happen. And I train people. Our people, they go around working miracles everywhere.
Wow.
I normally tell people we had 10 people raised from the dead, but none of them were raised by me. None. All of them were raised by people from the church.
Wow.
So that's
good.
What our ministry is. But then, because people see the orphans we help, the evangelism we do, but that's not the central message of our ministry. The central message is we want to see the power of God manifested. We don't hide it. Wow. We don't push it away. We want people to see it, to know it, to experience it, because when they do that, they will never run away from Jesus very quickly. Wow. When you give them a mental Christianity only, then when they have trouble and problems, they fall away. When they experience the power of God, especially the young people, tough times will come, but once they experience the touch of the Holy Spirit, they will never forget it. So that's who we are generally as a ministry.
Wow. I actually heard from Guillermo Maldonado's, I think, testimony when he was in your church about raising of the dead. And so I'm just really encouraged by what you're sharing. And for those of you on live stream, hey, could you just drop number 1 in the chat if this is helping you, if this is encouraging you, or if you are rewatching? I think it's just a very powerful reminder, because a lot of times, in the United States, Pastor Henry, we kind of, especially in the last 5 years, there has been a huge focus on the spiritual warfare. In our church has been a huge help. I mean, yesterday we had over 120 people. Some flew from Philippines for prayerful deliverance just last night, and just demons coming out left and right. And we also take people on the streets, so people went out to the malls and people were being healed. And so we don't preach the gospel until we demonstrate the gospel first on the streets. So we train our young people, and I feel so connected to what you were saying, to equip the saints, not instead of just building larger audiences, to just build an army. And our motto, or like our goal in our church, is also to turn every member into a minister, to equip everyday believers to walk their Christian authority in every single place without, having a physical microphone or a pulpit. So that's just such a huge assurance to everybody that's watching. And I'm seeing a lot of people responding, receiving a blessing from that. We have about 1,600 people that are watching us live right now, and hundreds that will rewatch this. Guys, this is just a reminder that God is doing something in Ukraine. God is moving in Ukraine, and God is raising up an army, and God wants to do exactly the same thing even here in the States and wherever you are watching. Pastor Henry, could you, since you were there since the former Soviet Union, could you give us a little bit of context about this issue of the conflict and the war? What is the history of Ukraine with Russia?
Well, I think the history of Ukraine with Russia goes a long way back. Let me emphasize this one thing. Ukrainian people are not Russian people. Sometimes people try to mix those two and say this is one people. Yes, they are Slavic people, but they are very different. Ukrainians are very free. I mean, you have seen so many times Ukrainians coming out in the streets and, trying to fight for their freedom, for their own politicians, from their presidents. Mm-hmm. Number two, Ukrainians tend to draw towards God more, I think, than the Russian. It doesn't matter whether it's the Orthodox or Pentecostal, Baptist, Adventist, Catholics. You will have more Ukrainians in the church than in Russia. Mm-hmm. That the Russian Empire, there was something called the Russian Empire, for a long time. If you go way back, I think that's where the trouble happened. There was something called Rus, which had nothing to do with Russia at all. It was just a place called Rus, which was located in a place called Kiev. So that's why they mentioned saying Kievsky Rus. So, and in Rus, with Yaroslav Mudry, the great, here in Kiev, that's why you have the biggest monasteries that Russia refers to as their beginning point. Many people don't realize that the founder of Moscovia, which is what modern day Moscow, he's actually buried in Kiev. He's not in Moscow because he was sent from here and he went to start Moscovia and he died here at home. Well, when the founder, the big empire, which was here, the Rus, whatever we call it, he had sons and he sent out his sons, and one of them went to the modern Russia. He became a very powerful, he was not the oldest stayed here. And one of them went to Russia. He became very powerful, and eventually he conquered his brothers, including the one who was here in Kiev. Subjugated by Russia. Sometimes part of it is taken by Poland, then the Swedes, so there's always been this tug of war of Ukraine trying to break away and Russia trying to take it. So it has been. So Ukraine has been fighting and trying to run away from that. And also Ukraine was made up of different districts. You have the Western Ukraine, which was more under Poland sometimes, Eastern Ukraine, which was more under Russia sometimes. So eventually you have that divide or that mix. And the politicians have always using that divide sometimes. When Ukraine became part of the Soviet Union, Uh, in communism at the beginning, like Russia, they came in a little bit later. So when they became part of it, there was always that tug of war, people shouting for independence, people being arrested, and the language itself was being suppressed. So you'll find that the number of books printed in Ukrainian became less and less. Newspapers were banned. I think Peter the Great used to do that as well. Ekaterina used to do that as well. So there's always been that big issue. So, and now what we have now is like, what would I say, a repetition of what has been before, but I think nobody expected to happen in the 21st century.
Wow. Thank you. Wow. You gave very scholarly, historic reference
To
to.
say that because people will raise issues, but that's the real history. Now, when you go to Russia, like any other history in Russia, it's always edited depending on who is in power, not only about Ukraine, but even about Russia. If you go to St. Petersburg, there are so many and pictures of great Russians. They've been edited so many times because somebody was great, then he had something with the king, the Tsar, and he's no longer great. He's removed and somebody else is put there. So the editing of history has been a norm.
In Russia.
Yep.
What do you think? And you already explained really well about the major differences between the worldviews of the Russian people and the Ukrainian people. And my wife is Russian, so I have to be careful what I say here stuff. So, but she came
For
from.
you, I will say it for you.
Yeah. So therefore, I'll have you say it for me. And I have my in-laws. They are Russian, and in fact, there was a time our local newspaper did an article when Maidan broke out that a house divided. And so we have right now people reaching out as well, local newspapers kind of asking for the inputs and stuff. And so, but you brought up such a good example of the history. But I've noticed a similar thing is that there's a lot of freedom in Ukraine and a spiritual like hunger in Ukraine and as compared to what's happening in Russia. I mean, how many churches in Ukraine, mega churches in Kiev? I mean, even the place I'm from is more from the western side, the Lutsk. And same thing. I mean, it was not a big city, but we've had thousands of people in just one local church. And so to see that vitality, spiritual vitality of Christians, I really believe that Ukraine is one of the most spiritually revived places in Europe, where just things are, even when I was there last time in Kiev and in Odessa in August, just the hunger, the prayer, the dedication, the commitment of the Ukrainian people. And I feel like a lot of that is even, I owe it to my grandparents who, when they converted to Christianity from atheism, and even though they were Baptists first, but that fervency, that commitment, that loyalty, paying the price of serving Jesus Christ, kind of still runs even, in my blood. It's like that generational thing. What do you think right now with what's happening in this current situation? What do you think is the real reason, or what is the reason of Putin or that his administration for invading Ukraine?
I would like to say maybe this invasion was not necessarily his administration. It's more Putin doing it. I think he's orchestrating it. I think I've seen so many of the meetings that he did with his different generals and ministers and deputies. They are pretty much just rubber stamping what he wants them to do. Putin, I think, this is what I think. Number one, he believes that when the Soviet Union fell apart, that was a tragedy that needs to be rectified. That's number one. Number two, he realizes he cannot retain the full Soviet Union as it was because some of these Central Asian republics they are very difficult to bring back, and also the Baltics. But instead of the Soviet Union, the Russian Empire will be much closer to do, which is Russia, Ukraine, Belarus, make a strong country, and then invade other countries and make it bigger. Well, of these, and number three, I think Ukraine was supposedly the reason why the Soviet Union fell apart, because the Ukrainians were pushing for independence from the Slavic side. The Lithuanians were pushing for independence and other guys, but no one from the Slavic part of the Soviet Union was doing that. And Ukraine became the first to push for independence because they've always been doing that. They were being suppressed. Nobody would hear their voices, but they were always pushing for independence. And I think Putin, he hates Ukrainians for that as well. And number four, the church. The Ukrainian church has separated itself from the Russian church, including the Orthodox Church, and then the influence, according to Putin, of the non-Orthodox Church is too high in Ukraine. To him, that's why Ukraine wants to change Christmas from the 7th of December officially to 25 December, 7th of January to 25 December. To him, that's nonsense. And he thinks that's the influence of the non-Orthodox Church, which is so big, too influential, and the West influences Ukraine through them. So he wants to come in and curtail the non-Orthodox churches, and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, suppress it somehow, bring it back to the Russian Orthodox Church. So according to Putin, it's the political issue, it's the geopolitical issue, it's the religious issue, and it's the too many thinkers in Ukraine have been rising up, and they were digging history, which was laid under the carpet for many years. So those four groups, Putin, actually I heard that there's a list that he has in each one of these four groups that they want to make sure they arrest or they remove or they do something with them. The politicians, the religious leaders, the influential people, because there are some people who are becoming too influential. And I think these things put together, and then his personal desire to get into history as the uniter of all these Slavic nations. I mean, I guess he has a dream from his childhood. Nobody knows, but I think he has that big dream. So basically, that's where it comes from.
What are you? So right now we're in about fifth day of this war. From the history of Russia invading other countries, I mean, they were usually pretty swift in Afghanistan, in Chechnya, and others. They would send their military in pretty much a day or two, and they would cripple the government, take over. And from what it seems like, reading the news and hearing the responses, is that Putin did not expect that there would be that much resistance, and he thought the Ukrainians will welcome the invasion with bread and with pretty much with welcome arms, because that's kind of the message that is being sent to Russian people, that Ukrainian people are just, or Russian people in Ukraine are crying out for deliverance, and Russians are the great deliverers. And there has been this resistance. What is on the ground right now, being the fifth day? You're in Kiev. That's pretty much where a lot of the war is taking place. Can you kind of give us a feel of those who are not there or who are just watching photos or watching videos? What is it like there, and what is actually happening now that it's being about 5 days into this war?
Right now I'm talking to you and I can hear the explosions. It's pretty nasty. Right now there is no safe place in Kiev. Today there were some negotiations that happened between the Russians and the Ukrainians at the Ukrainian-Belarusian border. And right when the negotiations finished, there have been, I think, 3 raids already in Kiev with explosions. One was in Brovary, 2 were right in Kiev. So right now there's a Telegram channel where people can see what's happening where. Right now there's real war. real fighting. I mean, it's not, it's real fighting, people dying.
Wow.
This is not the platform for that, but until today, 5,000 Russian soldiers have died. And this is day number 4, number 5. It's like 1,000 every day on average. And some of them are just young, 19 years old, 20 years old, but not all of them are young. Some are special forces, some are trained people. Very funny, I saw a video today of some Russian forces. They stopped their armored cars, got out of them, and went back across the border. Just left their cars behind. Yes, the Russians did not think the Ukrainians were going to be this highly motivated. There's a difference between the Russians and the Ukrainians in this war. Number one, the Russian soldiers are not motivated. The Ukrainians are fighting for their wives, for their children, for their daughters, and for their country. The motivation is so high to a point that the government was trying to do a general mobilization. They had so many people coming to volunteer to fight. They couldn't find enough weapons to give to them. So this is not just Ukraine as the president or the army, it's the whole nation. In fact, this is the first time when we have people who have crossed to other countries to get good jobs. Now they've come back for just one reason, to fight. Unfortunately, some of the soldiers were told that when you go to Ukraine, people will meet you with roses and bread and salt. Unfortunately, no. In fact, there are some places where the Russian forces were taking over villages, and there were no soldiers there. And the local residents are coming out to lie in the streets, asking the tanks, you can ride over us, kill us, but we won't allow you to enter into our city. People don't want this salvation from Russia. They don't want it. They are not looking for it. No.
I think Pastor Henry, I think your audio broke out. Would you check? I think your audio. Let's see if your audio, because I'm not hearing your audio.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear you now. We can hear you now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, let's bring the video
That's
back.
good.
I think now your video is out. Guys, sorry, there's this is in the middle of war, everything that is happening. So
Yeah.
so please excuse the the glitching. Some of you see that there's like a little bit of glitching. Okay, so we're good now.
Good.
Okay.
Well, so they've been in Kiev, where I am now. Nobody can go out of Kiev, and basically nobody can come into Kiev. We are not surrounded, but all the main roads into Kiev and out of Kiev are out of service. The bridges have been bombed, and some of them have been bombed by our soldiers so that the Russian forces cannot use them to get in. There are so many rivers around Kiev, so the only other way to come in is through the rivers, and it's very hard to drive tanks through those rivers. So basically, that's where we are. It's pretty hard. It's pretty difficult, and there have been so much destruction of high-rise apartments. Some of these missiles, they come in and they land into hospitals. They have people who put markers on what should be destroyed. Yesterday, they managed to remove and erase the markers on our hospital, children's hospital called Ahmadid. There were 7 markers on that hospital. In other words, they were going to shoot. And that's where children from all over the country, they stay there, they have cancer, they have pneumonia, little kids who are living, they cannot live without being in a hospital. And only to think that a missile was going to come and destroy that, that's outrageous. That's outrageous. It's no conscience of any kind, just brutality in its purity, hatred. I mean, you cannot win when you hate. You can only overcome the person you love, not the one you hate. So the Ukrainian army, what they do is when a Russian soldier is dead, they take their pictures or their documents. They put up a site with all the names. That's if the guys didn't burn up inside an armored vehicle, so that the mothers and the fathers in Russia can see their children. So things are pretty tough.
Wow. What about the Christians there? I know that quite few people are also, running as refugees to Poland and Romania, Moldova, and other countries. I know a lot of people are staying as well, and they're not going anywhere. What are Christians doing right now? What are churches doing? What is your church as well involved in? What is their response in this situation and in this time?
What the Ukrainian government did was they put up a curfew when nobody's allowed to get outside. That way they could catch anybody who was working or collaborating with the Russians. So the church in Ukraine has been, I don't think it has been as united as it is now. It's so united, and prayer is going on round the clock. Amazingly, these are charismatics, Pentecostals, Baptists. Everybody is fasting and praying. Our church, we have put on a 24-hour prayer. What we do is we put people in pairs or in a group of 4 or 5 people. So they pray around the clock. One person prays, goes to rest. The next person prays, the next person prays. Because of the curfew, you cannot go outside. Today they opened the city, they gave us a window to go outside. So there's nothing physical we can do. Today we did feed a few families that are in their houses with nothing. So we had some of our leaders run to their houses, give them food, and quickly run back to their houses. So what we are doing now is, and that's why I'm in Kiev, we are working out a strategy. We normally believe that's what we have seen before. When you have a war situation or a pandemic situation or whatever you have, the government comes in with the first line of defense, the government. The church always comes in as the second line. In other words, the government, the war phase is very active right now. So there's real war. The church cannot be there. The only thing that we did, we gave many people called chaplains. There are so many people from the church working with the army right now as chaplains, because these people in the Ukrainian army are simple people. Depression comes in. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So we have so many chaplains working with the army. The Ukrainian army has opened up to church chaplains, not only from the Orthodox Church. So our church, the Victory Church, we have, if I'm not mistaken, about 50 chaplains working with the army. And they're helping the soldiers. When things get tough, they need somebody with a Bible, somebody to encourage them. So that's what they are doing. Then number 2, the Ukrainian government has asked people to defend their own territory where they live. So if you're in a village, you protect your territory. So many people from the church who are in their villages, they are protecting their territories. And we are getting ready. We are putting up a fund in Ukraine. When I say I'm putting up a fund, we're not looking for money from anywhere. Our church, right now, we're putting up a fund, getting ready. Number one, we don't have too many products in the shops at the moment. So even if we wanted to buy a lot of stuff to give to people, there's basically nothing to buy. So what we are doing is putting up money. As soon as things cool down, the shops open up. We want to buy a lot of stuff, and in Kiev is made up of 10 regions. And we are putting up what we call the Club of Hope, a hope club, Klub Nadezhdy, which is like a club of hope, where local people in that area can come, get food, get clothes. We have already enough clothes already. We've collected so many clothes from our people. We have enough already. So we're going to put up a place you can come and get food for free, then they can prepare it in their home, clothes for free. But in our situation, we have to evangelize as well. Then there's the spiritual help. So starting from tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, we want to put up this information that if you need any spiritual help, please call this number. We've done it before, so we know how to do it. So that's what we are doing.
Wow.
Many churches will be doing that at different levels. So, and that's what we are doing. Of course, many of the people during the beginning hours of the war, they ran out of Kiev, went to Western Ukraine. That's where most of our people have gone to from Kiev. And some have gone across the border. But the men cannot go because the Ukrainian government now, if you are 18 or 60, you cannot go out. You have to stay here in case you need to take part in the war. So that's where we are. The active phase of the war, there's very little the church can openly do. But once things cool down, we are getting ready, because then that will be our time when we can come in, help the people, including the soldiers, their families. People need help after that.
Wow, you explained it so well. I really appreciate practicality of it, and how just I'm really blessed by you, Pastor Henry. You're very cool-headed, especially in a situation like this, because it's possible to just get all emotionally or even emotionally kind of draw people in, but how very well rounded and in your approach, I think it's extremely helpful for a lot of us. And I know we already took a lot of your time, and I really just honor you. Thank you for giving us the time, and we will also on our end partner with your ministry to help once things cool down as well, so that we can just reach more people and more people can hear about this. And I'm also really moved by the fact that for us as believers, our number one priority is to preach the good news. And it's not only to clothe people, feed people, which is good, but a lot of people, I feel like, have shifted more into just the social gospel instead of the gospel of the kingdom, and praying for the sick, praying for freedom. And so Pastor Henry, if somebody wants to know a little bit more about your ministry, or how can they kind of follow your ministry? I mean, I'm going to have links all the way in the video, but tell us a little bit more about if somebody wants to be a part of what God is doing there in Kiev, or follow your ministry online. How can they do that?
Our ministries, I have two parts to my ministry, and all of them are full-time. Number one is the church and the churches. So that's the Victory Church. So we have a website. It's in English, Ukrainian, and Russian. So it's victorychurch.org.ua. Many people, they write victorychurch.org, then they come to a church in America. So we do add the .ua, which is Ukraine. Yeah. So you have the English version, we have the Russian version, we have the Ukrainian version. And also my other ministry is called Christ for All Cities. That's the ministry I use when I go beyond Ukraine, when I'm doing evangelism. Some countries don't know me as pastor, they know me as an evangelist. So Christ for All Cities is the ministry that we use when I go beyond. And Christ for All Ministry, we actually have a branch office in the States, in Georgia. In other words, we have people do give us sometimes money through our Georgian sub office, and then we use it for our international evangelistic events. So if somebody wants to see me,
do you have a website for that? Christ for All Nations?
Christ for All Cities, Christ for All Nations.
That's
Daniel Kolenda.
Yeah, that's
Kolenda.
So, that's different one. Yeah, so we don't want to mix those. So I mean, God bless those as well. But do you have a website for the Christ for All Cities?
Yeah, if somebody gets to our website for the church, they will find Christ for All Cities there as well. But we also have it separate. See ChristForAllCities.com. There's no UA there, just .com.
Okay.
So, and that's how we work. And we, in Ukraine, we also use another ministry. This is the one we use for social work. In Russian, we call it Miri Dobrobut, which is peace and well-being. So because that's less religious according to the Ukrainian government. So when we come with peace and well-being, they allow us to go everywhere. But our main focus is to preach the gospel. And that's how we go around, and that's how we touch people. And we are always into preaching. It's not just giving people help. We want people to preach. And I'm very thankful because I know there are some ministries, including Awaken Europe, Jean-Luc Ministries, Harvest Ministries from Netherlands, Daniel Kolenda, Christ for All Nations, Jesus Image. They are working very hard at the border with Poland, trying to helping the Ukrainian people and also evangelizing. And that's so wonderful because right now, the Ukrainian people, like never before, they're being driven from their own land. And I want to say thank you to the Polish people. I think Poland has been like a brother to us.
Wow.
They are receiving Ukrainians, even if you have no documents of any kind. You just ran out of your house and you are from Ukraine, they will receive you in Poland.
Wow.
I've never seen that before. God bless the Polish people. So I think many, many years, people used to say, Ukraine, oh, you are from Ukraine, that is in Russia. And I think they will never say that anymore. So it's like there's this cut. This war has cut for the whole world that Ukraine is a different and separate place altogether. And I think, like the Bible says, whenever you see so much evil, there's so much grace abounding as well. There's something that God is doing. And my main focus now is not to complain about war, but to find out what's God's plan. What is He doing? Where is He? I'm trying to locate. Where is He? What is He wanting to do? So I make sure I tune in to what God is doing instead of running with my emotions and then miss God and miss everything.
Wow. That. Thank you, Pastor. We appreciate you. We're praying also here in the States. I had a person who came to my house today to do my garage doors today, and he's like, I just want to let you know our whole family and American people, they don't come to our church, and they're like, we're praying. I'm meeting in a few hours with a doctor who is also a pastor. They just gathered some money. He's coming in, with the check, and also just saying, hey, we're fasting, we're praying. A lot of people are really, even in the United States, are standing in the gap, standing in prayer with the Ukraine, with the people of Ukraine. And I just want to say thank you for the ministry you're doing, and thank you for being inspiration for little guys like me who are now in America, who are reaching out to the English-speaking community who had to learn English language. As for you, you had to learn the Russian language. And thank you for being that example. And then for also being that example, even in the issue of having the supernatural as the heartbeat of the ministry in reaching out to the world and to the lost. And I believe this is not going to be our last time. And I believe very soon we're gonna, if the Lord is opens doors, and if you'll be open to even have you at Hungry Gen as well to minister, because your message is amazing. I believe that the Lord is going to use that to touch this world. So thank you again. And I'll connect to you right after this live stream.
Thank you very much.
Guys, this was amazing. And let's give just, if you guys enjoyed this, go ahead and let me know that in the chat. If you guys, has this been a blessing? We're dropping links right now in the live stream with Pastor Henry's Ministries links. And so go ahead and you can just kind of hit that follow. Make sure that you follow him online. We wanted to be a blessing. I know that something like, I love how he highlighted that, hey, there's a lot of stuff we can't do right now. And so with our ministry, we want to be a blessing also to their ministry. We have a website that is going to be updated right now of the ministries that we send already donations to. I just want to say huge thank you to everybody who's donated. The link is right now on the screen. If it's in your heart to help the people of Ukraine, we're organizing a team as I speak to take to the border of Poland and to help the refugees there, as well as to help the churches there. And so if it's in your heart or in your heart of your church or your business organization to support, I give you my word and my promise that all of these funds will go only to the parts in the Ukraine. We don't send money also randomly. I have a team, and we will release a video by the end of this week that is doing a thorough also research by talking to these pastors, talking to their leaders, getting more information. A lot of them I know personally who are in Ukraine and who are in Poland, and some of them we're just doing a research as well, so that we can best help, because we don't want to use this crisis to just kind of to dump money. We want people really to be helped and to be ministered to. So guys, if God puts it on your heart, go ahead and do that. Go to pastorvlad.org/Ukraine and donate toward this. We promise to send all of the donations to the ministry of Ukraine. Our ministry doesn't get any of it. We just really feel like this is our moment. Me being Ukrainian, my wife being Russian, this is our moment to speak on this issue, also to highlight some of the things that God is doing in Ukraine. And I'm just so blessed that Pastor Henry did that today in bringing the history of what's happening in Ukraine, as well as on the revival that is taking place, and as well as what is happening with the war. So I think that this was really, if you guys enjoyed it, drop that fire emoji, share this video with other people as a point of reference. There's a lot of misinformation that's going on. There's a lot of all kinds of online world it's a wild west, and so our goal is to bring the truth out and to bring stuff that is cool headed as well, and to focus everything on Jesus.